let's talk about Davante Adams and whether or not the Raiders should trade Davante Adams. Now, this was sort of a bonus topic that Mike wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about this at all. I just threw it out there. Let's just add this in here because I have thoughts. I was kind of going through the stats of other players. So Davante Adams, in the first quarter, Davante Adams had 5 catches for 48 yards. That's great. That's really good in one quarter, right? You multiply that by 4, and he has 20 catches for 200 yards and maybe a touchdown or two, right? He ended the game with 7 catches for 57 yards. So in the first quarter, again, 5 catches, 50 yards, let's say. The next 3 quarters, you could only get him to complete. You could only complete 2 more passes to him for 18, 19 yards. What happened? Did the Bears just start selling out for Davante Adams and told you to beat them some other way? And obviously you couldn't. At the end of the game, there was a nice end zone target where Davante got himself open with a nice quick little move on the corner, and it just Hoyer just sailed it just out of the reach of his fingertips. Like, it hit his fingertips, but it was also like awkward and he couldn't catch it. And obviously his night would be way better with like 8 catches, 62 yards and a touchdown, right? On a game with a backup quarterback, it's like, that's solid. That would have been better than Jacoby Myers' stats of 7 for 50 and a touchdown. And honestly, I don't know how many targets Davante Adams had. Let me look really quick. But obviously the question at hand is, should the Raiders trade Davante Adams? Josh, do you have any thoughts about this?
It depends what you can get for him. The Raiders traded away a first-round pick, right?
First and a second in that upcoming draft. So two seasons ago. So not this past draft, but the draft before that.
It really depends, whether, like, what's the direction that McDaniels and Ziegler want to go. If they're going to move forward with Jimmy Garoppolo, get Davante Adams out of here, and get a pretty good return if you can get it. And I think teams would be willing to pay up for Davante. If you and here's why I would say it is necessary, if you're going to be successful in the NFL, to have a better quarterback option than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it's absolutely necessary, or you need guys who are more like the Niners receivers, where they're yards after catch. But those guys don't last long because, all that contact, it's not a sustainable way to operate, I would say. I think that more likely than not, you should keep Adams, and you really need a draft or trade for a good quarterback who can utilize him. Like, imagine if you go into the offseason and let's just say you don't have a top pick where you can get a guy like Caleb Williams or, any of the top, quarterback prospects. How would you feel, Mike, if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback of the team next year with Davante Adams? Like, it would be a huge upgrade. It would be a huge upgrade over Garoppolo.
It just, I cannot stand the fact that they restructured his contract. That's so annoying because, I think it's very likely that Kirk Cousins stays with the Vikings. But if they decide, we want to go in a different direction, the Vikings want to blow it up, and the only player they keep is Jefferson or something, I I'd feel way better about Kirk Cousins. I feel like he would fit McDaniels, but at the same time be very, very open to throwing the ball deep, and he would fit Davante Adams very well.
And he's
Yeah,
tough. He doesn't miss a lot of time.
yeah. I
Derek Carr
never
didn't
thought
miss a
of
lot of time either. And honestly, Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are kind of similar in a lot of ways. I just think that
yeah.
like the Kirk Cousins doesn't come across at like the way that Derek Carr does, where you mentioned that you thought that maybe some players would like kind of scoff at him in the locker room. Was that you?
Yeah, I think that was me. Yeah.
Um,
Here's my issue with Kirk Cousins though is the cost. Like the only reason I was okay with Garoppolo was because he was pretty cheap for a starting quarterback.
mhm.
Um, and the mentality I've had all this time since I was I was greenlighting the idea of getting rid of Derek Carr. Was I want the Raiders to draft a quarterback soon. Doesn't have to be last year's draft or the year before that. It doesn't have to be this year's upcoming draft. It just needs to be soon, and they need to have a plan for it, and they need to build up the team at least enough to where it's ready to compete when he walks in and starts playing. Probably more so year two of that quarterback, his career, because the rookie quarterback contract is a huge advantage for teams if they can utilize that with a good roster surrounding him. So that's what I want. I want a cheap rookie quarterback starting for the team, successful, has the ability to become a top 5 quarterback in the league, right? Um, and obviously he has the players and the tools around him and the coaching around him to succeed. Um, and I can't help but think that the coaches are not suited to help a quarterback succeed. I think as the weeks and the years go by, more and more it feels that it is proven that Tom Brady was the sole reason for the Patriots dynasty. Along with their defense, their defenses were good, but I think he carried McDaniels and I think he carried Belichick. That is what is starting to become pretty apparent to me because Belichick isn't getting it done anymore. Fucking any chance that Josh McDaniels has gotten, he's sucked. But that's a different topic. It's just
Give
that's
Belichick a
me.
little credit. They did just beat the Bills, who are one of the best teams in the NFL right now, and he did it with Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean Belichick is still great, and I think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. I just think, from what I've seen, like Belichick's teams since Brady have not been very good, and McDaniels has not been very good. And what was the one thing when they had Brady? They were the best team in football, bar none. So there was a level of execution that was different when they had him.
Uh,
Um,
real quick, hanging on that. If I'm not mistaken, the Patriots were in the NFC Championship game before Brady.
I mean,
I mean,
probably AFC.
they were deep in the playoffs, like before Brady,
They
right?
had Bledsoe. Yeah, Bledsoe was supposed to be this great quarterback, and then he got hurt, and Brady came in.
And Belichick was the coach then, still.
I would assume, yeah.
So, Brady went to an already good team,
Yeah.
and then he was a system quarterback at first, and they built him up, and then they gave him Randy Moss, and the rest was history. Like they built up Brady to, I mean, he won a
He
Super
won.
Bowl.
He won before Randy Moss, and he
I
probably
mean,
won even more without him, or after Randy Moss. I mean, Randy
mhm.
Moss didn't win with them actually. Like that was their
Yeah, no.
best, most prolific offense. But Brady, it did not matter as long as Brady had a solid defense. And I mean, most of the time they were a great defense, but they were owning the time of possession on offense. Just like the 2019 Niners offense, right? But their quarterback play was immaculate.
Like if
So
you're telling me that Brady would have like ended up on the Cleveland Browns, you know, or the Chicago Bears,
Right.
I don't know if Brady is the same person that we are today. So I think Belichick deserves a little bit of credit, and this
He
topic
definitely does.
isn't about
I'm
Belichick.
not trying to shit on Belichick. It's just I'm
He
really
has to look good this
praising.
year.
No, I'm really just praising Tom Brady because everybody that has ever left the Patriots to be a head coach has fucking sucked. And they're all Belichick proteges, right? And now Belichick doesn't have Brady anymore. And the first year without him, I think they made the playoffs. Maybe the second year, I don't know. They made the playoffs with Mac Jones like a year or two ago. Other than that, they have not been that good, right? They can win games, obviously. Yeah, they're going to beat their divisional opponents here and there. But I, I'm curious to see how Belichick's remainder of his career goes and how short it will be.
You bring up a good point about Belichick's. Is the term disciples
Yeah.
about how they've all bombed everywhere they go.
Mm-hmm. The best one has been Mike Vrabel.
Because just a couple of years ago, people would compare Belichick to Bill Walsh, and Bill Walsh had 3 Super Bowls, and Bill Belichick has 6, right? And you could definitely make the argument for Belichick, but we've talked about it. Belichick is sort of hurting his legacy right now. But one thing about Bill Walsh, and not to steer the conversation down a rabbit hole, I'll just say this: Walsh's disciples have more often than not been successful, and Belichick's have all bombed.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm overlooking some, but
Right.
But back to the Raiders, back to your thought, Mike.
Well, I don't know what really got us all the way on that. Just probably we were talking about the quarterbacks and whatnot. But as far as Davante Adams goes, and specifically revolving around this Bears game, he had 12 targets, right? And again, he had 5 catches, 48 yards in the first quarter. Clearly, the Raiders started the game with the urgency to get him the ball, right? Like, I'm sure that was the opening game script and really the first quarter. Like, let's get Davante Adams the ball, because if you've paid attention in the media the past 2, maybe 3, probably since week 2 when they lost to the Bills, like, the media has been, oh, if the Raiders suck, will Davante Adams want to leave? Like, everybody's just it feels like the media is forcing this idea that Davante Adams definitely needs to leave. Like, he wants to leave. If the Raiders were to trade him, here's your best 5 options. Like, there's been nothing out of the Raiders locker room, specifically from Davante Adams, that suggests that he's demanding a trade. But yet the thought is so commonly out there that I can't help but wonder if he wants to be traded, right? I can't help but wonder if he's like, I'm over this. Like, it's clear that this isn't going to work. At what point does Josh McDaniels lose Davante Adams' faith? Did Davante Adams ever have faith in him?
It's long gone, dude.
And that's the other question, is because this is also a Josh McDaniels conversation to be had here, but I wonder if he has lost the entire locker room.
I feel like the moment where he probably lost Davante Adams' faith was when they benched Carr last season and decided they were just going to move him. Because one of the main reasons why Adams came here was because he thought Carr was going to be his quarterback. Now he's got quarterback uncertainty, and he's got to go through the quarterback carousel every week of like, all right, Jimmy Garoppolo 1 week, Hoyer 1 week, O'Connell 1 quarter,
Yeah, and it's definitely not fun for him. He's literally going through quarterback purgatory right now.
Yeah, and he's getting hospital balls galore. Oh my god, Adams is getting killed out there.
I mean, I haven't noticed it too much, but last week against the
Patriots,
yeah, he had that one that was bad. But I mean, getting 12 targets a game, like, his stats shouldn't be too bad. But granted, I mean, he's I don't think he's gotten a 100-yard game since, let's say, week 3. Like, it's been a couple weeks since he's gotten a 100-yard game. Like, I don't know how much he cares about the stats. He's very adamant, and I really believe him that he just wants to win, and he just wants to win with this team because that would be the most satisfying thing is to turn this franchise around, right? But that's what Derek Carr tried to do for 10 plus years or 8 or 9, whatever it was. He only had one successful year, or technically two with 2021, but like it seems like it's a very tough road to and uphill road, to make that change for a franchise like this.
I've got a really interesting trade idea.
Go ahead.
Originally, I was going to go with, Ayuk and another pick, but this might be even better for both teams. How would you feel about Deebo Samuel in a second round pick for Davante Adams?
Man, Deebo on the Raiders would be interesting. It depends on what the situation is with Davante. Cause basically, to answer the question at hand, should the Raiders trade Davante Adams? I think it's yes, but it's also if. I don't think this regime wants to trade him, partially because that's been the ongoing statement every fucking week from any given reporter is the Raiders have said or made it clear to NFL teams that they are not trading Davante Adams. Like I'm sure teams are calling, wondering, and they're like, we're not trading him. No chance. And maybe it's to drive up the price of, hey, he's unattainable, but then you overwhelm me and here you go, And I hope, I'm not even going to lie to you, I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my issue. December 30th. Oh, sorry. December 24th, 1992 is his birth date. He will be turning 31 years old this year. And I still think he's arguably the best wide receiver in football. I really do believe that. To answer your question, Deebo in a second, that doesn't quite get it done for me. But it would be acceptable because I could see it being worse. What I could see happening is come trade deadline or this offseason, but come trade deadline, the Raiders have not won a game since the Patriots game, and he's livid. He's getting 50 yards a game, 7 to 8 catches, hardly any touchdowns. Quarterback play is atrocious. Makes it obvious in the public, I want out. The moment he does that, his value just decreased in a trade because now teams know he could hold out, he could throw a fit, he could do whatever. The Raiders can do nothing about it but trade him. And there comes a point where that cost keeps going down and down and down until finally the Raiders go, oh, fuck,
Nothing.
fine. Like, yeah, you get nothing. You get here's a third round pick for Davante Adams. Remember when, well, we don't remember this, but the Raiders traded Randy Moss for a fourth round pick because he was going out there and jogging on every play until finally the Raiders just gave up and traded him to the Patriots. I don't think Davante Adams is ever going to jog, at least not regularly on a play or on plays. But if he decides to make it apparent that he wants out, he can make it tough on them. So if that's what's going on behind closed doors, trade him for a first rounder, maybe a first plus, while you still can. And maybe because you give a first and a second 2 years ago, his age has gone up, so his value's gone down. Maybe it's first rounder, period. Maybe Deebo in a second is actually really fair and actually the best thing they can get. Maybe.
Because I figure Deebo has showed that he can play to Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths, throwing at the line of scrimmage, run up, yards after the catch, like there's a connection there.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the Niners side, They get a receiver who will be on the field more often, and one of the best receivers in football.
Yeah, I mean that's ring chasing 101 right there. I was actually going to bring up, I think the number one team that makes sense to me to trade for him is the 49ers. And the reason why is because his list, if he were to allow a trade, and granted he doesn't have a no trade clause, I'm like fairly positive. So the Raiders could trade him to like the Lions or something. But the big talk was he wanted to come because Derek Carr was here. And I think most importantly to him, other than the Raiders being like his hometown team and stuff, but most importantly was that his family, specifically his grandparents, were close because they're in the West Coast. So the Raiders are not trading him to the Chargers. I don't think Davante Adams wants to go to the Rams because they're not at all in the running for a Super Bowl, and he would have to compete with Cooper Kupp and
Puka
Nacua. They can't afford him. The Rams have no cap space, so
and the Rams need to trade for Derrick Henry, not for Davante Adams.
Yeah,
they're fine at receiver.
Yeah, they're more than fine. The Niners have what, 40 plus million in cap space. They are suited to make that deal. And actually, they could restructure the deal down to 1 year and allow Davante Adams to become a free agent if they don't want to keep the contract going. He'll probably accept that because he's still at the top of his game.
The Niners don't really need Debo anymore the way that they did before. Like when they signed his extension, once they traded for McCaffrey, it was like, I thought they would still use Debo and they would use both out of the backfield, but it was like, no, it's McCaffrey or die.
Yeah. The more I think about it, Debo in a second
is fair.
Makes sense. I think it makes sense for both teams.
Maybe it's not fair, but it makes sense for both teams.
Yeah, I still think a first rounder for Davante, maybe with a player like, I guess the thing I was thinking is like, let's say this is hypothetical. He would not be traded to this team. But let's say they trade him to the Seahawks. Like I would want Tyler Lockett and I guess a first. I don't know. That's tough. I mean, really what I was actually thinking is like a third string wide receiver and a first round pick. That's what I was thinking for Davante.
Or check this out. If you want to get more convoluted, it would be Davante Adams and a third for Debo and a first. And probably a sixth.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and that would do it for me for sure. I would take that. Yeah.
So and it sucks. That's more along the lines like probably more realistic, instead of like, 2 for 1.
Yeah. Yeah, like I have these notes. Basically, I'm like ready to go on a tirade about they need to fire Josh McDaniels. And that was the other thing. Like, I really don't think this regime wants to trade Davante because he was like their baby that they first, like that was their big move that they first did. They didn't have a first round pick or a second round pick when they first came into this team because they traded for him. So I think his value to them is like through the roof, right? So it's going to take a lot for them to actually get rid of him, I think. But I think this team is so fucked with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. And your offensive players are kind of just aging, right? Between your quarterback, your Davante Adams, Josh Jacobs in running back years is in a year or two going to be up there. The only young offensive player you have is Michael Mayer. That's it. And Dylan Parham at left guard, who is kind of hit or miss on any given play. So, I don't know. I can't help but think that this team needs to rebuild. They need to attain draft picks. They need to fire Josh McDaniels. And they should do it. If Josh McDaniels has lost the locker room, they should do it tomorrow. They should fire him immediately. You can keep Ziegler the rest of the year. That's fine by me. But you can relieve him of his duties at the end of the year because this was a joint effort, right? And the Patriot way should not be a thing with this team. I saw a tweet that was like, all those years in Oakland of losing, and even in Vegas the past couple years with like Gruden, they sucked, but that like they had the Raiders mystique. It was still the Raider way. Like it feels like with Josh McDaniels, they've lost their identity. They've lost their way. And I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I totally see it, you know. I see the point made. This feels like a wannabe, obviously a wannabe Patriots, but like I don't know, like this wannabe poster child team that just fucking sucks, and their offense blows massive horsecock, and their defense has always been bad. It's like you need to get a young offensive mind in here and a general manager that actually can make fucking moves to get young talent on this team. And you need a new quarterback. Bad.
So, here's what I'll say. I don't know why my thought just it just slipped my mind, but I'll start off with this head coaching candidate that I would want for the Raiders. And I've been saying this for a very, very long time. Like I think it's been 2 coaching hire cycles that the Raiders have gone through, and every single time I say the Raiders should hire this guy. It should be Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a coach. He's the favorite coach that I've ever witnessed in the NFL. I think if you get Harbaugh, you can the franchise can turn itself around. And towards the end of his tenure with the Niners, I heard that he had lost the locker room. So I'm not saying Harbaugh's perfect, but it seems like he went to Michigan, and Michigan is like a top, like a top 10 school, right, or a top 10 college football team. Harbaugh instills confidence, and really like he's absolutely a football guy who understands the game very well. He doesn't
Ex-Raider.
knock down his own players. He's an ex-Raider. He fits the profile of the Raiders. I feel like he would get the Raiders back to the whole, it's us against the world. And that's what it was. You were talking about Josh McDaniels having, like sort of going away from the Raider way. Over the past 20 years, the only Raider way that I really know has been like, dog shit and like, embarrassment and, like this and that. But where Josh McDaniels differs from the coaches before him, well, no, I mean, it got this way for most of the coaches before him, besides like John Gruden and Hugh Jackson. I feel like it's getting to that point where this looks very bad, and it's like it's just time to move on. You know what I mean? Like this isn't working, and there's no vision where this is going to work.
Yeah. I think maybe part of what that tweet that I had seen about the Raider mystique or whatever going away, maybe part of that for this person, they don't realize it, is the fact that they moved on from Derek Carr. And we had such a long tenure with him, which we hadn't had in a long time with a quarterback, to where that might have been a culture shock for some fans of like, well, this is a different quarterback paired with this coach that we already don't like. And our offense statistically is absolutely horrible. I don't know. But Jim Harbaugh, yeah, he's a great candidate. I would be very excited at the prospect of him as our head coach, because I think he is a great locker room guy, and he's great with quarterbacks. My only issue is not with him, but I just can't find it to be realistic because I think he's very much all in on Michigan. That's his alma mater, and I think he is going to do everything he can to win a national championship with them. As long as he finds it to be realistic, right?
Well, the Raiders just got to slide him an offer that he can't refuse.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? That's another conversation though. A lot of people wonder if I think maybe you brought this up or somebody commented this. I don't know, like previously, um, that perhaps Mark Davis doesn't have the money to fire Josh McDaniels because he owes him X amount of money, and he might still be paying Gruden, which I kind of doubt that because of the way that he ended up uh, uh, not being relieved of his duties, but
Canceled.
he was canceled, but he had to uh, fire himself, or the fuck the term is.
Resign.
He resigned, yeah, which usually means like no more paying me, but I could be wrong. But theoretically, if Mark Davis is having issues with paying money out of his own pocket to like a coach like Josh McDaniels,
You're saying reinstate Gruden?
no, I'm
Oh,
I'm just saying you won't be able to afford Jim Harbaugh coming out of Michigan. There's no chance. And like I think the worry is that forces him to keep McDaniels, but really what it would do for me is you still fucking fire him, and then you just hire a coach who's up and coming, deserves a shot, but isn't demanding top fucking dollar like I'm sure McDaniels was, and I'm positive Jim Harbaugh would, and I know for a fact John Gruden did. Stop going for these overpaid fucking idiots. I'm not saying that about Harbaugh, but the other two, sorry, but yeah. And go for a guy like Ben Johnson or something like that who is up and coming, has not been a head coach yet, so isn't going to demand top dollar, and hopefully he's good in the locker room and he's very smart and has a good track record on his offense or defensive play calling.
you know who might be cheap, who might be available probably this offseason? Who's currently a head coach right now?
In the NFL or college?
NFL. And I'm not saying this coach is doing a good job or anything, but I think they're a good guy. And like,
Oh, Ron Rivera.
yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just like I'm fine with that. I do think that a locker room guy will matter for the next coach. Uh, but whoever they get, he has to get great coordinators. Like that's my thing. If it's going to be a guy like, let's say we get a special teams head coach like a Rich Pizzacchia or John
Who they should have
Harbaugh.
kept in
Yeah,
retrospect.
yeah, they absolutely should have. He was a locker room guy. That's a fucking locker room guy for you. And then you could have kept him and just had him find the best possible coordinators. And maybe they would have kept. They probably would have kept. I'm forgetting his name, but the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at the time.
Was
Who
it
was
Todd
really
Downs?
no no. Oh geez, Greg. Damn it, I don't know, but he was a Derek Carr guy. They would have kept Carr and so forth. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
anyway,
So
this is a long.
should they trade Adams?
I say yes. I say yes because they should rebuild.
I
And
think
the
it.
longer you keep him, the lower his value is going to get, and he's not going to get us anywhere. I'm sorry. Like I'd rather see him go somewhere else and succeed than just stay on the Raiders and be pissed off and just make this team look even worse. But
No,
there
you
is
don't.
the other side of that is if you trade him, the rest of the team immediately their morale is sunk. They're like, well, this season's done. So there is that aspect to it, but still, it's like there's a process to this, and it's a business. And if I think you have to fire Josh McDaniels. And once you do that, you go to Davante and you ask him, what do you want to do? What do you want to stay? Or do you want to seek a trade? Do you want what do you want? Who do you want us to play at quarterback? Right? I'm not saying put Davante in charge, but I would fire
let him
if
have
I were.
say either
Yeah,
keep him happy or respect his wishes.
yeah. If I'm in charge, I'm firing Josh McDaniels tomorrow, and I really don't like anybody to take over, to coach and play call. Like I don't believe in Mick Lombardi. I'm sorry. Uh, I guess I would probably promote our defensive coordinator. I'm forgetting his name right now. And I would go to Davante Adams and say, what is best for you? What do you want to do? Do you want us to target you 20 times a game, or do you want us to trade you? Do you want us to try to trade you at the trade deadline, or do you want to wait till the offseason and kind of come back to it? What do you want to do?
Well, there are now how many days left? 7 days?
Till the trade deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, week 8 makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That sounds about
I think
right.
the 31st is the deadline.
Yeah. And I mean, along with that comes Hunter Renfrow, who probably will get traded, but if he doesn't, then I don't know if this is his last year under contract, but he'll just, unless McDaniels is fired, he will just stay the same and then in the offseason leave,
Mm-hmm. Or O'Connell will take over and Renfro might be relevant again. So
Yeah, maybe. But yeah,
I
my whole point to all this is I would, if I were in charge, I would look to trade Davante Adams to try to acquire picks for this team to rebuild. And it sucks. It sucks to say it, but I also think wide receiver is a position that you can, I wouldn't say
replace.
easily, but it is a very replaceable position.
Mm-hmm.
You can find guys relatively quickly at wide receiver. And I think Jacoby Myers is a great start. I think he's fine. I'm not saying he's a number one in this league, but he's fine. He's
He
great.
was the
He's
number
been,
one in New England.
yeah, and he's been very consistent for us. And again, I think Davante Adams helps tremendously with that. But, you can have an offense with Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers, and you draft and sign other receivers. You already have Trey Tucker, the speedy guy. So just go out and get some fucking bodies and see what happens, man. And then you can, again, trade Davante for good picks, fire Josh McDaniels, bring in a new offensive scheme, and see where that takes you at the quarterback position. This draft is looking like it's going to be loaded at quarterback. So, I just think at this rate, if they're going to suck, which it looks like they are, I'm firing the coach, and I'm looking at the roster and I'm going, who is worth keeping and who isn't? And then you go from there.